Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
Series 9 is brought to you with Lava Light. Whether you're a novice gardener, specialist grower, or houseplant enthusiast, Lava Light can help you to nourish and protect your plants all year round. The collection comprises 8 different horticultural growing media and pest control products, each continually offering the same natural benefits from thermal protection and moisture retention to soil conditioning and continued nutrient boosts. Derived from volcanic deposits, Lava Light is completely natural and sustainable. Look out for it online or in your local gardening stores.
So when you open a book or manual or perhaps buy a new piece of botanical art, do you ever wonder how such intricate detail is painted onto a piece of paper? We have an insight for you today with Lucy Smith, Botanical Illustrator from Kew Gardens, who will give us some tips on how to get your paintbrushes prepped and eye for detail on point. She will also tell us how her illustrating work helped her to discover a brand new species of plant. Wow. Cannot wait for this one. Welcome to the podcast, Lucy.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Also known as Palm Smithy on Twitter.
That's right.
Oh, no, Instagram.
Instagram.
Everywhere.
Palm Smithy. Wonderful.
You've branded yourself.
Well, that's because when I first came to Kew from Australia, it was to illustrate a book of palms called The Palms of New Guinea, which aimed to illustrate every single species of New Guinea palm. And that was over 22 years ago, and I'm happy to say it is almost finished.
Oh, wow.
Gosh. So take us right back to the beginning. Where did your love of botanical art start? Were you doodling palm trees on your exercise books in class?
I don't know about palm trees because I grew up in Sydney and I didn't see that many palms, but I loved nature. I had a dad who was really into nature, still is. Took us on lots of bushwalks around Sydney as kids, and I loved insects, I loved birds, I loved little things, and I loved drawing nature. So it was a little bit later on when I went to university and studied visual arts that I learned about natural history illustration and later on got into plants.
Wow, super cool.
So do you recommend having training to get into botanical art, or is it something you can just go ahead and go and try?
Yeah, I think it's important to have some training. I have an art background, so I didn't learn any botany, but I learned that as I went along. I think training helps you to be disciplined and also, of course, to learn the basic techniques like how to draw properly, how to measure, how to be accurate, how to record colour well, then how to apply pen and ink, how to apply pencil, how to apply watercolour, and there are lots of things that you can learn from the beginning which will stop you from sort of heading off in the wrong direction. But I think once you've got the basics, it's then up to you to go, in which direction that you want to go.
Honestly, I've had a go at watercolour, but it's just messy for me. Like, it's just like messy. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
I wonder if you're not patient enough to use watercolour, Ella Mary.
That's probably the case.
You do need a lot of patience, and botanical watercolour is quite different from a lot of other watercolours like landscape or whatever, because it's quite controlled. We use watercolour for botanical art because it can really mimic the colours and the patterns on plants, and it allows you to layer up really rich colours with lots of detail. Detail's really important, of course.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like so important on botanical illustration.
I haven't really, this is going to sound very shameful, I haven't really drawn much since I was a lot younger, so I'd really like to get back into it at some point. But obviously during lockdown, last couple of years, like botanical illustration kind of perhaps had a bit of a boost as more people at home were starting to, do a lot of those activities.
Yeah, one of the reasons botanical art and illustration has always appealed to to lots of people, is that plants are all around you. So you've always got something to draw, paint, you've always got something to be inspired by, and people are surrounded by plants, they have beautiful plants in their home. So I do think in lockdown, people suddenly had the time to explore.
It was magic,
really.
I know there was a lot of bad, but it was magic.
There's not a lot of people who would say it was magic.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
It was a lot of connection and everything.
There was a lot more connection to nature.
Yes.
And actually, I'm grateful because for some of it, because it gave me the opportunity to paint a life-sized Victoria leaf, which was 1 metre in diameter. I want to do 2 more, but I haven't found the time since then. So yes.
Paper big enough.
Hold on a minute. We're going to talk about that very shortly, but you've just said a life-size.
Yes, a life-sized Victoria Amazonica leaf. So it was about 1 metre in diameter, and to be honest, it started out as a little bit of a dare because I was only really focusing in on the flowers of the Victoria waterlilies at that time, and someone said to me, why don't you do a full-size leaf? And I just laughed. But the seed was planted. I bought a special roll of paper, I prepared a special board that I could stretch it on, and collected a leaf back in 2019. Somebody cut a leaf for me, and I photographed it and made specimens, and finally got the opportunity to draw and paint it.
See, lockdown did give us the time to do things. I completely agree with you, but it's easy to say now that it felt magical, but at the time I'm not sure many of us thought it was magical.
No, I think only in retrospect you realise what an opportunity that was.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. So with this illustration of the Victoria Amazonica, you'd already talked to Carlos, who works here at Kew, and he kind of felt there was something a little bit different about that. And as you started to illustrate it, you kind of then backed up that theory, perhaps. Tell us that story,
that's
please.
right. Well, back in 2016, I'd started this project, sort of an independent project, illustrating the 2 known species of Victoria waterlily then. So
the Kew tour bus is just going by, and they're playing some really cool street music, I believe. Yeah.
We're saying, what are those people doing under that tree? There were only 2 known species of Victoria then, Victoria Amazonica and Victoria cruziana. And my job that I gave myself was simple. Well, it wasn't simple, it was very challenging, but it was to show the differences between those 2 species, because that hadn't been done for never been done actually.
Well, it appears that Kew Gardens is under the flight path to Heathrow. So we've moved indoors to complete our interview with lovely Lucy. So we're now in one of the meeting rooms, surrounded by gorgeous botanical books, this and that, a whiteboard as well. We could start drawing on there, couldn't we?
Some thriving houseplants.
We won't talk about those.
That's a spoiler. So we need you to kind of bring us into this story about the new species of Victoria and how that really came to be with your partnership with Carlos.
Yeah, so I was already drawing the 2 known species, as I said before, Victoria Amazonica, Victoria cruziana, and nobody had illustrated the differences between them. And in fact, the scientific literature was really poor since they were described over 150 years ago. So Carlos was gifted some seeds from Bolivia, from Botanical Gardens there, and said this year I'm going to grow them in the Princess of Wales Conservatory.
How exciting that must have been.
It was really exciting because we didn't know how they would grow. And actually, when it first grew, the leaves were quite horrible.
Yeah.
They were really misshapen, and Carlos thought maybe it was to do with the type of compost, or maybe it didn't like fertiliser. And there was a point there where the staff of the glasshouse were worried it would have to be taken out. Because it wasn't looking nice. And then finally it just got happy and started producing these beautiful leaves. And even when we saw the leaves, we're like, whoa, this is unusual. Like, I can describe it, but I won't go into detail. But it was just really different. And then it was a matter of waiting for it to flower so we could look at the different flowers. And I wasn't allowed the first couple of flowers because they have to pollinate it, self-pollinate it to make seeds. And by this time I had a really good routine set up with the glasshouse staff, because they would let me come in after hours.
Really?
And they would even let me stay over.
Stay over?
Yes.
Did you sleep in the glasshouse?
Yes.
Oh my God!
That's the dream! Oh, wow.
Well, I have to say it's
In a
not...
sleeping bag?
That's what I thought, but it's not quite that glamorous.
Oh.
And I originally said, should I bring a camping mat? And they said, have you been in here after dark? I said, no. I said, have you seen the cockroaches?
Oh, no way. So you thought it was night at the museum, but
Yes.
it was nothing near it.
No. Instead, it was night in the first aid room.
Okay, fair enough.
But that was still pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I would stay there late at night. I had to have somebody with me from horticulture, so some kind volunteer. I had lots of different volunteers would stay with me, and we would sit and we would wait and we would wait and wait for the flower to open. Everything had to line up, and then decide when is the right time to cut the flower.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Did you know what day it was going to open, though, the flower?
No.
So you had to have a few false start.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
I had to go in whenever it started flowering and buds would pop out the water, because it flowers one flower at a time. It opens over 2 nights. So on the first night it's white, and in the wild it's receptive to the pollinator, which is a beetle. It heats up inside and lets out a beautiful scent, which attracts the beetles in. It then traps them inside for a whole day, and then the second night it opens up again. This time it completely changes form. Everything pops out, all the stamens pop out, and it kicks the beetles out. Right, you've done your job. Please take my pollen
It's like spitting
somewhere
them
else.
out, right?
It literally evicts them. You're out, and off they go. And so over those 2 nights, it completely changes colour and form, and then it sinks back down under the water. So I had to keep a real eye on the buds and, ask the staff, do you think it's opening tonight? And I'd come in, I'd be all ready, and no, not tonight. Come in the next night. So to get those flowers and observe them and photograph them and draw them and make specimens of them meant that all these different things had to line up. And it was to get those photographs that you see in the paper and on the interpretation panel. It took a lot of work to get them.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's just the most amazing thing to do.
It's really exciting.
Tiring, yes.
Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
I feel really spellbound by that.
I am as well. It's amazing.
It's hard to keep the Victoria story short.
We don't want you to keep it.
I think we're all here for it.
Here we are.
Did you sit on it?
Well, a few weeks ago I got to stand on one.
It was okay with that?
It was fine. I had to stand on a board so that my weight was distributed evenly.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you how much I weigh, but I can tell you it was a good weight that this leaf carried. Alberto from Kew had already done it a couple of weeks earlier, and I instantly said, hello.
I'm the
Alberto's such a pioneer.
I am the one
He did it for the gram, I'm
slept
sure.
here. Yeah, I slept here all those nights. I'm going to stand on the pad. Yeah.
Because just for listeners, kind of like to the scale of Victoria, how wide is that leaf?
So Victoria leaves have been known, for their huge size and for their ability, we thought, just to hold the weight of a small child. But Victoria boliviana, one of the things that makes it the king or the queen of the Victorias, I think, is that it has been known to have leaves which get as wide as 3.2 metres.
Wow.
Gosh,
So that's about 10 feet. And we've had them here in the pond at Kew over 2.8 metres recently.
Oh, that is brilliant. And just talk us through a little bit of the botany of how they are able to withstand that weight as well. It's like a kind of bubble wrap, isn't it, in a way?
I suppose
That's the way I describe it.
I never thought. I guess it is, because it has these huge ribs on the underside of the leaf, which are very, very deep towards the centre, and then they taper out towards the edges. And they because they have these. They form these deep cavities, they trap air in between the ribs, and they allow the leaf to sit up on the water and to support great weights.
That's quite incredible, isn't it?
I know. And I remember on the Green Planet, the BBC programme, how they pushed
kind of
through and how they're so
pushed up.
strong
Yeah.
to even move other stuff out the way.
They're real bullies,
Yeah.
and they're covered in really sharp prickles. So if you're in the pond with them in your waders, you've got to be really careful not to bump into them, because you'll come out with a wet bum.
Because they literally lacerated all the water lettuce when they came
That's
through on the
right.
programme.
Yeah, they're real bullies.
Well, we saw your photograph on one of the boards at the front of Kew. It was you and Carlos. there holding, or kind of, I guess, not near the spiky bits of that. I mean, how much media coverage was there?
There was so much media coverage. I mean, we knew it would be big, but we didn't realise how busy we would be on the day that the scientific paper came out. So once we'd grown the plant here, and I'd been able to make really detailed drawings of it and compare those drawings with the ones that I'd done of the other 2 species, we said, look, let's try and describe this as a new species ourselves. You know, it's quite unusual for a horticulturist and a botanical artist to do that. And as we proceeded, we realised we needed to expand the team. So we had a brilliant taxonomist, Alex Monroe, join us, and Natalia Preslomska and Oscar from Kew, who did a deep dive into the DNA. And it just became this big paper that you know, helped distinguish all of the species as well as describing a new one. And when that paper came out on the 4th of July, we just had such a blast answering all the media.
I bet you did. You know, I was just thinking about like the botanical illustrations and how precise you have to be, because those illustrations, you know, you done of a different one another time ago have to be so, you know, in detail, because when you then compare it to something new, if you've got one thing wrong, you could then do you know what I mean? It could completely skew it all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as a botanical illustrator, I'm used to showing a plant in such a way that you can show the differences between it and the closely related species. That's what I'm trained to do. So you learn to observe the differences and to highlight the differences.
Right.
And you're entrusted with quite a responsibility because you can't make anything up, and you've got to make sure your observations are accurate. And after a while, you get your eye into a plant. I know when you're growing plants, you get your eye in, don't you? And you see these subtle differences. So, yeah, when you're drawing them, I actually think to really know something is to draw it. Once you draw it, it becomes fixed in your mind and
really ingrained, isn't it? Then
This is so cool to learn about the illustration, but also about the discovery that came out of that kind of illustration work as well. And we've obviously talked about how a lot of people got into illustration through lockdown and kind of different kind of parts of their lives, but it's therapy, right? It is a mindful activity.
Yeah, it is. It is really mindful when you're looking at a plant and nothing else but that plant, and your aim is to capture a record of that plant using your pencil, your pens, or your paint. That's all you think about, and you just your whole world sort of telescopes in, and you just focus in on that one beautiful organism. You know, it's lovely. Everything else disappears. And when I'm teaching my botanical illustration classes here at Kew, you can hear a pin drop. And I'll say to everybody, it's lunchtime, you can take a break, and nobody moves.
Oh my God.
I so badly want to do it. Like, I love botanical illustrations. I'd love to give it a go. I just don't know if I've got the patience. And like, you teach obviously as well. What's the first thing you would say to someone? Like, where do you start? Someone's sitting there, they have a flower, a piece of paper, their watercolours. What do you do?
Oh, such a big topic. I think, well, for me personally, the first thing to do is learn to draw, because there's so much about structure.
Can you learn to draw, or is it a talent that's within?
I think you can have a talent for it, but you can also learn. And so many people say to me, oh, thanks for teaching me the steps, because if you break it down into simple steps, you know, look at the general form and then move in on the detail, and it's so good to have living material in front of you rather than working from a photograph, because you can touch it and rotate it and poke it and prod it and see what's joined to what. So yeah, I would say learn to draw, learn to measure, learn to observe, and then, you know, learn all the techniques of using the materials.
Learn to draw. I mean, honestly, I've tried.
But I guess there's no real kind of, maybe different people approach it in different ways as well, or is there a set method? Like, you kind of like, is layers, because you talked about the levels of detail there.
Well, It depends on what kind of botanical art you're doing. Botanical art is a huge spectrum from, more loose stuff to the really tight scientific work that we do at Kew. So that's the stuff, the scientific work is what I've been used to doing here at Kew, working for botanists who are describing new species to science, for example. And for that technique, you learn how to measure, you learn how to enlarge details, how to magnify details, how to draw whilst looking at parts under a microscope. And if you're drawing living plants, you learn to observe the colour correctly and learn how to mix your colours to make your colour accurate. So there are definite boundaries and steps that we use as sort of strict scientific botanical artists and illustrators. But I think anyone who has those general skills can then take their botanical art in whatever direction they want. So you might have an artist who once was very tight and illustrative who now who does big free loose work as well. So it's a big field.
And also I guess it's kind of very personal, isn't it? The style of drawing that you do. Just like art, it's art, isn't it? Everyone has a different sort of style.
That's really interesting, because even within the scientific illustrators, people's style comes through.
Right.
Even though you're being really true to nature and true to life, there's still stylistic things that creep in.
So of a representation of your personality, perhaps, in that.
I'm not sure what that says, but
I want to know, though, if you're going out in the garden or walking around Kew, are you ever able to enjoy plants without wanting to draw them?
I'm afraid that I warn my students of this. I say, once you start botanical art, that rhymes. Once you start botanical art and illustration, you never look at plants the same way again. And that's both a blessing and a curse, but it's mostly a blessing, because you look at a leaf while you're waiting for the bus at the bus stop and go, oh, how would I mix that green? Or look at the beautiful patterns on the underside. So it does give you a special power, special power vision to...
But it also activates the mindfulness as well at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is, for a lot of people that maybe can't reach that level, then,
Hey, it's like a superpower.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
I get my students to paint a single leaf and they kind of roll their eyes at first, but then 3 hours later, they're like, oh, I love this leaf. This is the best leaf I've ever seen in
It's
my
a
life.
superpower
really cool.
into, like, the love of nature.
Well,
Yeah.
I did tell you I painted an iris on a stone for my grandma when I was young.
That's
Cool.
so cute.
Yeah.
So
And it's
cute.
I feel like it's one of my earliest memories, but also and now I would always credit kind of an iris as being my favourite flower as well. And of course, it's like a nice memento as well.
Plants have so many associations for us, don't they? Yeah.
Is
they
it hard
take
to
us.
paint on stone though?
I can't say I've ever tried.
It's a bit crazy now. I don't even know what paint I used. I was only like 8 years old.
I think we should
Try it
both
again.
try. I think you should try to botanically illustrate an iris. No, that's
they're
weird.
pretty hard.
And I'm going to botanically illustrate a French marigold.
Okay. That could be
Nice.
cool. I'm not against being painted either. Actually on me.
Are you a plant?
Oh, that's an idea. What plant would you be?
I don't know.
You are kind of though.
Rafflesia.
You've got lots of beautiful
Do you attract
tattoos.
flies?
Because tattoos is another level of...
So you are painted.
That's true.
And some of these are watercolour, actually. They're watered down to give you that kind of effect as well.
You know what? I've always wanted to get a tattoo, and it would be a plant, but I can't
You'd be
decide
really
which
fussy.
plant.
You would be really fussy.
Could
about
you
the
imagine if they drew it wrongly on me?
Yeah.
I just couldn't
You'd
live with
probably
that.
kick off, wouldn't you?
Put it on your
live with
back
that.
like me, then you can't see it just in case. That's what I did. I was 40 when I got my first tattoo because I knew my parents would be furious, and I figured that I got to 40 when I felt like it was okay to do it, and then I got 3, but 2 of them are flowers, and I picked them specifically, and you get to see it all before you have it, but I put them on my back just in case they annoyed me.
Hilarious. Well, I think being a botanical illustrator makes you slightly OCD, or maybe you are to start with. And, I would just die if I had a flower tattooed on me which had the wrong number of stamens.
But you could
couldn't
have
cope.
tattooed on you your illustration. Like, you can illustrate it, and then the tattoo artist would just print it and go over it.
Yeah.
So then you're a little bit
halfway there.
Yeah, I do. Well, I did pen and ink illustrations of the Victorias for the scientific paper, and one of the people working on it did say they were going, oh yeah, that'd make a great tattoo design. And I was like, oh, where are you going to put it?
Thank
that's
you
brilliant.
so much.
So nice to learn about, obviously, illustration, but then with that lovely package of learning about the new Victoria.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I love what you do here, and I love you know your involvement in it. It's so crucial. I'm going to go and have a look at some of your illustrations now.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, see you soon.
Thank you.
Hey guys, if you want to find out more about the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew, you can actually tune into the second series of their very own podcast. It's launching on the 6th of October and it's called Unearthed: Journeys into the Future of Food. Enjoy! Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast News.
Your horticultural news roundup for the week.
The RHS Autumn Conference is set to take place this week in London. RHS Director General Claire Mattison and others will reveal the latest plans for the new year. This will include news about the 2023 Chelsea Flower Show, gardening for health and well-being, and the future of climate change on gardens.
The grass people have calculated the number of single-use plastic items that would fit into the average-sized garden fitted with artificial grass. Their research has also revealed how much single-use plastic could fit into all UK gardens with fake turf. Some of the standout facts were 950,000 plastic straws is the equivalent to the amount of plastic in a single garden with artificial grass. Non-recyclable artificial grass is adding to our plastic problem to the scale of 11 tonnes across UK gardens, and 31,000 food wrappers are estimated to fit in an average-sized garden.
Traditional orchards are vanishing from the landscape, with an area the size of the Isle of Wight lost in a century. But community orchards are booming, thanks in part to renewed interest in living off the land during lockdowns. People are now clubbing together to plant fruit trees on local green spaces, village greens, and schools.
Do you know what paludiculture is? Well, it's the practice of farming on re-wetted peatlands to grow profitable water-loving crops while helping to keep carbon in the ground. And back in August, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs have announced there's a £5 million paludiculture exploration fund to promote the use of peatlands for sustainable farming.
An environmentally friendly alternative to plastic pots has just been launched. Wool pots, based in Sussex, are helping to reduce plastic use in horticulture and giving wool another purpose. It's also a natural slug and snail deterrent.
Budding botanists have put their best foot forward in Kew's annual clogs and apron race. Yes, 8 new students at Kew's School of Horticulture donned clogs and an apron in a bid to claim the coveted trophy. The tradition, dating back decades, is used to welcome a new cohort of students at Kew's School of Horticulture, challenging them to run around 300 metres with the wooden shoes on. Apparently, it's part of the old uniform for horticulturalists. I've got to say, I probably wouldn't want to try that. Series 9 is brought to you with lava light. Derived from volcanic deposits, lava lights can help you to nourish and protect your plants all year round. The collection comprises of 8 different horticultural growing media and pest control products. Look out for their colourful packs either online and in your local gardening stores.
The music for the Plant-Based podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.